Hi, my name is Jordan. I'm a member of the GenOUT Youth Chorus, a vocal ensemble for LGBTQ+ and allied youth ages 13 to 18, based in Washington, D.C. The 34 young people who sing in GenOUT believe strongly in the idea of living authentically, which means that we follow our dreams as we define them, without worrying about what other people think our dreams should be. We live our lives on the outside the same way we feel on the inside, even when those feelings run contrary to expectations others have for us. Living authentically is not without its challenges. When anyone veers away from the traditional or unexpected path, that person is likely to face opposition in the form of bullying or discrimination. We believe, though, that the inner happiness and peace that comes from living authentically far outweighs the burdens of discrimination. We believe that the people who live authentically are in the best position to make a positive difference in the world because they aren't weighed down by behaviors that are artificial to their being. They don't have to waste time and energy pretending. We are coming to you in early May 2020, about 8 weeks into the coronavirus global pandemic, when all of us are quarantined at home. For most of us in GenOUT, it is easy to be our authentic selves at home because our families love and support us for who we are. We recognize that for many LGBTQ+ young people, this time at home is extremely stressful because who they are authentically is not loved and supported by their families. Our hearts go out to our friends in these situations, and we hope this short video will be a source of inspiration and hope to you. Today, a few friends of mine in GenOUT would like to share with you our personal definitions of living authentically, as well as some of the ways we are taking care of ourselves during this stay-at-home time. We want to show you that you are not alone in your desire to be your true self, and that even in these challenging times, there are ways to cope.
Hi guys, I'm Matthew. A big part of living authentically for me is the way I present myself. Fashion and clothing help me figure out who I am and help me live a happier, more authentic life. I always knew I was never the most masculine person. It was around 8th grade when I started coming to terms with being queer. That in turn led me to start thinking about the way I presented myself and my authenticity. To me, a big part of being authentic is connecting your inner self to your outward expression, and the best way that I found my inner self was experimenting with what I wear. My sisters were the first people to support me in my venture into the fashion world. They'd take me on shopping trips, and we'd probably spend way too much on all sorts of different clothes. It wasn't easy at first. There's so many unspoken rules about fashion in our society, and these rules limit what we see our choices to be. After countless trips to the Forever 21 men's section, I realized I was never quite satisfied with the selection I was supposed to like. Bomber jackets and skinny jeans were cute, but not quite what I was looking for. In truth, I was jealous of my sisters, who had more variety and freedom with their clothing. I told them this once, and one of them said, "There are no rules saying you can't wear those clothes." Until then, it never clicked with me that I could just be a boy who presented femininely. No matter how you identify, you're allowed to express yourself any way you want. Your gender is not defined by the clothes you wear. The only thing that really matters is how your clothes make you feel. In an ideal world, people can present themselves in any way they want without getting judged. Sadly, that is not the case today. Dealing with that judgment can be hard, but know that you can get through it. I know from experience that an offhand comment can temporarily wreck your self-esteem, but those comments aren't important, and the way they make you feel isn't forever. What's important is to understand that you aren't dressing up for anyone but yourself. Let those comments go and dress them in a way that makes you happy. Build a support system of like-minded people who can give you strength in face of ignorance. I am lucky to have such a supportive network of friends and family. They affirm who I am on the outside and who I am on the inside. They respect me and love me for my authentic self. How do your clothes express who you are? What aspects of your life are indications of your authentic self? Who among your friends and family can be your support network? People who respect and love you without judgment. I hope you will think about these questions as you take your journey to find your authentic self.
Hey there, my name is Charlie, and I've discovered that during quarantine, when I have a lot of time stuck at home, I've had lots of time to do activities that I enjoy and explore new hobbies I've never had the time to try. These things have kept my spirits up during a time when it's easy to feel down. Some of my favorite things to do are play guitar and ukulele, listening to my favorite songs, drawing, playing MMORPGs, games in which thousands of players assume roles of characters in a fictional setting. A new game that came out during quarantine that I've really enjoyed so far is Animal Crossing. In the game, you build up a town and invite fun animal friends to live there with you. There are over 600 possible friends to make, and real-life friends can also visit you on your islands. If you can't get the game, there are videos you can watch of other people playing it. I personally recommend Jacksepticeye. He's a YouTuber who makes gaming videos. While I've been stuck at home, I've also worked hard on building up my drawing skills. I've been doing this by drawing my own characters, especially my characters from Guild Wars, a story-driven MMORPG that has unending content and so much terrain to explore. It can be hard keeping your spirits up in a time when there's so much to worry about. For me, the best way to do this is to make time for activities that bring me joy. Escaping the real world through amazing online stories or immersing myself in new hobbies that allow me to express myself are surefire ways to make me feel happy. Especially during this time of quarantine, I encourage you to follow my lead and make time for the activities you love or have always wanted to try. Write that short story you can't get out of your head. Draw that original character you've been considering for a long time. Take up a skill you've always wished you had the time to learn. There's no time like now to rediscover something that you love or try something new. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Dylan. Today I'd like to speak with you about myths and misconceptions. The world is full of them. Some are good-natured, like myths about Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy. But others, like misconceptions about LGBTQ people, are harmful. One of the main ways that they are harmful is that they discourage LGBTQ people from living authentically. First, let me share my definition of living authentically. Living authentically is living in a way that makes you happy and acting upon the real you. I pride myself in living a life that is authentic, but living authentically can sometimes mean facing down myths and misconceptions others have about me. One of the myths or misconceptions people have about people who are living authentically is that they are weird. Actually, they're just being their best self. My best self may be different from the way you define your best self, but that doesn't make me weird, just different in a good way. Other myths or misconceptions about people who are living authentically is that society or a person's family force them into that role. It's quite the opposite. They want to be in that role. The way I choose to express myself is mostly guided how I feel inside, and sometimes that doesn't follow the same path as society and my family think I should take. That's okay. A third myth or misconception about people who live authentically is that they're selfish. No, I think that when people say this, they're confusing being selfish with independent. I know that others may have their own definitions of what I should be and what dreams I should follow, but I want to be in charge of how I define myself. I want my dreams that I follow to be ones I came up with inside my own heart. The final myth or misconception I'd like to talk about is the one that says living authentically means you can do whatever you want. Now, this is partly true, within reason. I still have to obey traffic laws, and I still have to follow teacher instructions at school. I still follow rules like saying please and thank you, and making my bed in the morning. I'm not a revolutionary in every single thing I do, but I insist that people respect my choice of name and use the pronouns I want them to use for me. I expect to be able to dress in a way that matches my expression, and I refuse to let my dreams be defined by someone else. When I hear myths and misconceptions like the four I mentioned, I think that they say more about the people speaking them than they do about me. I think that they say that the teacher might not be living authentically, and the way I'm living is unsettling or scary to them because it's different from their experience or understanding. Instead of being scared, I hope that when people see me living authentically, they will be inspired to follow their dreams and listen less to the voices that say they are weird. Whenever I hear someone repeat one of these myths or misconceptions, I try to help them understand the truth and encourage them to adjust the way they think about people like me. I share with them what it really means to live authentically and how it feels to live that way. I let them know that my life is better for it. Explaining in a compassionate way works most of the time. One day, I believe that the entire world will live authentically, and on that day, maybe people like me won't be such a strange sight.
Hey, my name is Jay, and I'm a member of the GenOUT Chorus. Ever since I was little, I always felt like I was different from my peers. I didn't have the words to describe what I was going through, but I always felt like I was more connected to my male classmates than my female ones, even though I did lots of female-oriented activities. I was a Girl Scout from Brownies through Cadets, that's 1st grade through 6th grade for my non-scouts, and was a member of an all-girls soccer team for all of elementary school. Sure, I had fun selling cookies and playing defense, and I liked all my fellow scouts and teammates as people, no doubt. But I was never excited to grow up, start puberty, or become a woman. I hated it when people called me by my birth name. It didn't help that my extended family practiced modern Orthodox Judaism, an extremely sex-segregated religion. I had no idea why I felt this way, but I knew I wanted to be a boy. Come middle school, and I start to find out more about being transgender. Before that, I had only heard of it in passing, like on adult cartoons my parents would watch. I thought transitioning from one gender to another was extremely rare, and it could never happen to somebody ordinary like me. Right? Middle school was a mess, and it's a really long story I'd rather not retell. All you need to know is that there was a lot going on, and every time I tried to come out to my parents, I was dismissed and ignored. My mental health took a tumble, and every day I felt worse than the last. I tried to act like a middle school boy without actually coming out as one, which translated to being extremely loud and abrasive 24/7. I couldn't tell you what I was feeling in middle school behind the mask because I was so caught up in the act. I came out for the last time to my mom over the summer of 2018. She was unconditionally accepting and promised I could socially transition in 9th grade. All my teachers and classmates knew me as Jay. I went to the boys' lock-in sleepover that my school hosts every year for the freshmen, and I was just one of the dudes, and it was great. But I knew I was different from them. We were all about a few years through puberty, but we were going through it differently. There's no point in beating her on the bush. I was the odd one out. I felt like a cheap imitation of them. There was no use in denying that I was developing differently than my cisgender peers. I knew hormone replacement therapy was possible, but I didn't know anybody who started it at 14. There are even some transgender people who are against hormone treatment before 16. How was I supposed to get the treatment I needed? I had asked my dad and stepmom about hormone replacement therapy before, and they were all pretty strongly against it. The only transgender man my dad knew before I came out detransitioned after 15 years of presenting as male, and the only one my stepmom knew was her cousin, who developed severe health problems after medically transitioning. So convincing them to let me start hormones would be a bit of a challenge. My mom had worked with an LGBTQ clinic called Whitman Walker in the 90s and knew they offered gender-affirming services. She was willing to let me go into their office for an intake meeting. I told a doctor the story of my coming out process and how I felt about my gender. I felt a connection to maleness for a long time, but I just found the terminology a few years prior, and I had just recently come out to my parents. The worker at Whitman Walker who did my intake meeting referred me to a local therapist who specializes in working with transgender youth. After a few meetings with this therapist, she concluded that I would need to go take hormone replacement therapy to alleviate the distress I was experiencing. I don't think every trans person seeking medical transition should be required to see a therapist before getting access to the resources they needed, but I was definitely able to rationalize a lot of emotions I had in her office, and I highly recommend that trans youth see therapists who specialize in LGBTQ individuals. It's so much more gratifying than seeing a therapist who's learning at the same time you are. My therapist convinced my dad and stepmom to let me start taking testosterone at a low dosage, which is normal for anyone starting T. After a few more appointments at Whitman Walker, I was prescribed testosterone cypionate, a synthetic hormone that promotes male puberty. I didn't get any of the changes that get hyped up at first. The first 2 weeks consisted of emotional changes. Who knew testosterone made you want to go punch walls at the slightest inconvenience? I didn't do that, but I definitely wanted to. But even though I wasn't experiencing changes at the rate I had hoped, I experienced a sense of joy just knowing that I was finally on the right path. I knew that eventually I would see and feel the physical results I had wanted for so long. Fast forward 14 months. Now, at age 16, I can look in the mirror with confidence. The person I see looking back at me is the person I used to see only with my eyes closed. It means everything to me to be my authentic self. I knew from an early age that who I was outwardly did not match how I felt inside. I wasn't living authentically. I found that for me, the path to living authentically required medical intervention, and for this, I needed the support of my parents. They wanted, and still want, the best for me, so we took the journey together, figuring out what the process looked like. That journey built trust and helped us draw closer together. I'm now living authentically and experiencing life more happily than I did ever before. Everyone is different, and no one will have exactly the same journey I had. But if any of my story resonates with you, I encourage you to have an honest conversation with your parents and invite them to join you on your journey. Be patient and have room in your heart for understanding and love. These are the things you'll need most along the way. Thanks for listening.
Hello, my name is Parker, and one of the ways I've been coping with quarantine is getting into podcasts. I look for podcasts that have storylines I'll enjoy with characters I can relate to. I especially enjoy podcasts of fictional stories and a range of subjects from horror stories to Dungeons & Dragons, or D&D for short. These stories tend to have strong emotional content, and some of the best can be so intense they bring me to tears. All of the podcasts I listen to have queer characters in them. I appreciate that these podcasts portray queer people in a way that normalizes being LGBT. The Penumbra podcast is a good example of a podcast which most of the characters are queer-coded. In other words, the characters seem to, or code, queer, but their sexual orientation is never made a central part of their story. When I see a minority included in a story, it's always important to me not to make that the thing that makes them a minority, whether it be race, gender, religion, or sexuality. The main character trait, while also not erasing the fact that it is a crucial part of their identity. Other examples of fiction podcasts with queer-coded main characters are the Magnus Archives, Welcome to Night Vale, and Critical Role. A good example of a D&D podcast that has queer-coded characters is The Adventure Zone. One of the main characters is gay, but it's not something he's made out to be a big deal, and his sister is explicitly known to be trans. I appreciate the producer of the podcast went out of his way to find out how to sensitively include a trans character in the storyline. He tweeted out questions to get advice from the D&D community and make sure that he wrote about the trans character in a way that wouldn't offend the LGBT community. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always had stories in my mind and have always enjoyed creative media like book series, plays, shows, and podcasts. One day I would like to create a book, play, or even my own podcast. Something I can say is mine and I create it. In my own stories, I will embed a lot of myself in the characters. I like to share my stories with others, and I like to make them feel the way I feel when I listen to the stories I love. When others listen to my stories, I would like for them to be able to relate to me and find themselves in my characters. While you are stuck at home or at any time you are dealing with a stressful situation, consider checking out a podcast. You can find podcasts on Spotify in any subject you can imagine, so if horror stories and D&D characters aren't your thing, don't worry. You'll be sure to find a subject you love.
Hi, I'm Wikus. I'm a junior in high school and an alto in GenOUT, and as I make this video, I'm stuck at home. I can't wait to see my friends, sing with GenOUT, and produce plays at my school again once the lockdown is lifted, but while we're all stuck at home, I've had to find other ways to cope with the situation and experience joy. Today I'd like to share with you 2 solid ways that always work for me when I need to lift my mood. My first method is journaling. I find that journaling is a great way to get out my feelings and thoughts productively and in a safe space that I can share or not share with whomever I wish. I think it's really helpful to be able to put down any and all of my thoughts and focus on what's going on in my life and in the world. Once I journal, I feel ready to face the world. Journaling helps me process things that happen in my life and understand how I feel about them. Sometimes I write things down that happen just simply to fill space, and I go back to read it and realize that I now understand how I feel about those things. I like being able to look back on old journal entries of mine and see how I've changed and how I've stayed the same over time. But I know from experience that it can be really difficult to get into journaling, so here are some tips I've picked up over the years that I've journaled, which may be helpful to you if you want to try it now. Firstly, I've learned not to make too unrealistic expectations for myself. For a long time, I would stop and start journaling, writing super long entries each day for a week, then stopping and not picking my journal back up for months. I guess I had this idea that my entries had to be profound, great works of literature, which was a terribly unrealistic and unhelpful expectation to put on myself. Once I got rid of that, I began to feel at ease when writing and free from self-judgment. I also started writing in journals that have smaller sized pages. I realized that my older, less productive journals had much larger sized pages than the ones I use now. With smaller pages, I put less pressure on myself to write a lot, but I can still write a lot more whenever I want to. Secondly, feel free to be super messy in your journal. I like to collage in old torn up pieces of paper, magazine clippings, receipts, and candy wrappers. I'll show you some examples of my journal entries. When you look at them, you might initially think that I've made them into be pieces of art. The truth, though, is that doing this is just another way that I journal. It's just a journal without words. When I collage and doodle in my journal pages, I always feel like I'm getting out all sorts of emotions like stress, frustration, sometimes anger and sadness. And afterwards it feels much easier to breathe. Another form of self-care that's helped me during this quarantine is taking care of my dog, Oscar. When we adopted him just last summer, he immediately brought my whole family together. I noticed that since everyone is back home now, since my siblings had to come home from college, it's a lot like last summer, which was a good point for my mental health, so I've tried to be mindful of that and take advantage of the situation. He definitely loves that my family is all home too. Since I can't hug my friends right now, I'm especially grateful to have a pet. If you have a pet, I highly recommend using this time to bond with them. I love teaching my dog to play fetch and chasing him around the living room, which is his favorite play space since it's carpeted and he can't slip on it. I'll try to get him to kiss my cheek on camera, another thing that I've taught him recently, but he can be really stubborn, so let's just see how that goes. Oscar, come here. Here, Oscar. You wanna give me a kiss? Give me a kiss. Give me a kiss. Give me a kiss. Give me a kiss. Kiss, kiss, kiss. Yeah, he's stubborn. That's okay. It's okay. I found that simply taking care of another living being is really helpful for my own mental health. It's productive, and I think it gives me some perspective as to how I should be treating myself. That is, with just as much love and care as I show my dog. Even outside of school and scheduled activities in the outside world, there's so many ways we can experience joy in our lives. These are my favorites. What are yours? I hope you're all staying healthy, happy, and safe during this difficult time, and I hope you can take some inspiration from my self-care strategies now and whenever you're feeling stressed. Bye!
Hello, my name is Elena, and I am a new member of the GenOUT Chorus. I'd like to share with you a little about the main way I cope with stressful situations: exercise. Whether walking, running, biking, or doing yoga, exercise helps me stay healthy physically and mentally. During these times when the gym isn't open and no sports are going on, I have to get a little creative with maintaining a good level of activity. I also try to set attainable goals to stay productive and give myself a reason to celebrate. I wear a pedometer so that I can track my steps, and I aim for about 10,000 steps a day. To achieve my goal, I usually walk around my neighborhood for an hour every day. That hour of walking, paired with my day-to-day activities around the house, usually get me my needed steps. This attainable goal gives me a sense of control in a time when lots of options are not available. This physical activity is also very refreshing as it helps me get out of the house for a while every day and gives me some time to let my mind wander and de-stress. Runs are a go-to for me when I'm feeling especially frustrated or particularly stressed. They give me a change of scenery and allow me to exert myself more than walking. I find I can essentially vent my issues into the pavement or trail rather than take them out on my family. Biking is another great activity that allows me to get some fresh air and occasionally talk to my neighbors while maintaining a safe distance outside. On rainy days, I'm fine with walking with an umbrella, but running or biking are definitely out of the question. Since we have had many rainy days this spring during quarantine, I have taken to using my mom's stationary bike in the basement. I can adjust its difficulty level on the bike, and I love challenging myself to reach higher levels of resistance or travel more miles. It gives me something to work towards and gives me a little variety in the days that occasionally blur together stuck at home. Another activity I love to do is virtual yoga. I do a type of yoga that incorporates muscle building as well as stretching. I always feel great afterwards as the stretching really helps my body recover from being at my desk most of the day. The harder poses give me a sense of accomplishment when I complete them, and I love the feeling after completing a nice workout. Including exercise into my daily schedule helps me give myself a sense of routine and structure. The physical activity allows me to have some time to myself and to de-stress, while also maintaining my physical health.
All of the people in this video are living authentically. Their dreams are defined only by them, without worrying about what other people think they should be. They are living their lives on the outside the same way that they feel on the inside, even when those feelings run contrary to expectations others have for them. At times, living authentically requires vulnerability. At times, it requires courage. It always results in a sense of inner peace and happiness that comes from not having to pretend. We have seen today that living authentically can be seen in the clothes we wear, in the misconceptions and myths we counter, and in the tough conversations we have with our parents about the medical assistance we need. We have seen individuality expressed through podcasts and puppy dogs and lots of activities in between. We hope this video has shown you that you are not alone in your desire to be your true self, and that even when life is difficult, you can find ways to cope.